welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And we're picking right back up where we left off with Weeb February, which is my way of saying the words that Jackson knows how to say in Japanese.
Nihon nigatsu.
Yes, that's what we're going for here. But my brain does not have the brain cells required to comprehend.
Sean, the fact that I know that and you don't is strictly speaking a mark against my character and a mark for yours. Not because knowing Japanese is bad. It's because of why I know Japanese.
That is fair, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back now for a second. But we're picking up right back up where we left off after we took that week-long hiatus for you know what? Fucking goddamn Damien is just always out here being like, I need a break for my mental health or whatever. This is why we don't work with outside editors.
Fucking Dirk, you outsource it to Darren, and it all just falls apart.
So I mean, yeah, fuck him. We're talking about Perfect Blue this week. There was not a segue from that to this.
I mean, this would be a pretty challenging movie to segue to, I think.
Well, hang on. Can we talk about colors for a second? I think that might work.
We can talk about Sonic colors like we did in the pre-discussion.
We can't reveal that. Are you kidding me? We can't reveal that we are two people in our mid-20s still discussing Sonic colors in 2021?
Listen, there's only one Perfect Blue, okay? And it's the Sonic hat you got for pre-ordering Sonic colors that look like his spines.
Okay, I guess that works. We're talking Perfect Blue. We segued on the second attempt. Go us. If you're unfamiliar with Perfect Blue, as I suspect many people might be, it is an anime from the late 90s by Satoshi Kon.
Yep.
Did I get that right? Oh my god, I got a name right. Fuck yeah.
My man did it. The directorial debut of one Satoshi Kon. He did it.
Yes, so Satoshi Kon's directorial debut, Perfect Blue, and you might have seen Perfect Blue if you have watched Black Swan. If you haven't watched Black Swan, what you need to know about Perfect Blue, it is about a woman's transition from the life of a pop idol, a Japanese pop idol, to an actor, and I say that with a capital A because she is a serious actor, and the cognitive dissonance that comes along with that, as well as the issues that come from being a person of public interest and how that impacts mental health. Also, editor Sean here with a quick content warning for sexual assault, and I mean pretty graphic sexual assault, so be aware. It's a deep one, y'all. It's one that's going to be personal, I'll tell you that much.
Yes. When I suggested this movie, I literally knew nothing about the plot. I saw that Eye Patch Wolf did a video about it, and I like Eye Patch Wolf, and I'm like, Satoshi Kon, I've heard that he's a great filmmaker. Perfect Blue, maybe I should watch that sometime, and then watch this Eye Patch Wolf video. And then I watched the movie, but didn't have time to watch the Eye Patch Wolf video before coming in here. So my entire secondary purpose was for naught.
And see, the cruel irony of this is that I have watched that Super Eye Patch video just by pure I don't watch Super Eye Patch videos, Super Eye Patch Wolf videos. It just happened to show up in my YouTube Recs, and I'm like, yeah, all right, this might bring some education to an otherwise uneducated discussion that is beating a dead horse.
We're just sitting here slurping the runoff of other content creators.
That was a foul description. Jackson, have you any experience with Perfect Blue before this moment?
No, but I'm glad I have experienced it because I thought it was fucking great.
Yes, I like Jackson, I have no prior experience with Perfect Blue whatsoever. I was actually pretty much entirely unfamiliar with Satoshi Kon in general, other than the fact that I have been meaning to watch Paranoia Agent, which I didn't realize was a Satoshi Kon joint until today, so accidental coincidence there. But I've heard Paranoia Agent is very good and sounds like something that is very much my shit.
Yeah, people have told me, speaking of Satoshi Kon, people keep telling me to watch Paprika, which infamously, supposedly, Christopher Nolan ripped off wholesale to make Inception. And I love Inception. So if there's anime Inception but better, I need to watch it. But I'm also kind of afraid to watch it because I do love Inception and I don't want my image of that movie to be ruined.
Your whole personality will be snapped in twain. Oh God, Christopher Nolan's a hack thief.
That's okay. The Dark Knight will still exist.
Until it turns out that, like, that's an Akira Kurosawa film or something. And all that has been happening is that Hollywood has been stealing from Japanese anime movies our entire fucking life, which is kind of what it has been doing.
I mean, look, there's an ebb and a flow to these things. You know, we as Americans, you know, the Americans made King Kong, and then Japan looks at that as like, we're gonna make Godzilla. And then we look at Godzilla, and we're like, we're gonna do something else. You know, there's an ebb and a flow to theft, a shifting tide.
We're gonna take Godzilla, a very personal, important, pacifistic message, and we're gonna make him a big dumb lizard. America, baby.
But Sean, who would win in a fight? Godzilla or Big Monk? I need to know the answer.
And soon we shall, Jackson, for the third time.
I was gonna say we can't even blame that one on the Americans. They started that shit.
All right, well, listen, I really liked it as well. It is intended to be a thriller of sorts, and I, honest to God, don't know that I got into the thriller element of Perfect Blue. I really liked the film. I really liked the filmmaking. I really liked what it was doing. But for whatever reason, the tension of the movie very much missed me. And I don't know whether this is just a headspace thing, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute because I can largely talk about what I want to talk about with this movie in the pre-spoiler discussion, or whether it just it is a movie that has been used in so many other ways. Like I was talking to Sam about this and we finished watching it. She's like, I have experienced Perfect Blue in about 800 other stories and webcomics who are just remaking Perfect Blue. And I'm like, yeah, it's a very influential film. I'm not super surprised. And so I wonder if that is partially why I didn't really get a whole lot of tension out of it. But again, I still quite enjoyed it and would still quite recommend it.
I think where, because I've definitely had that experience before, particularly The Matrix is kind of my go-to for this, and that, like, The Matrix is a very influential film, but not one that I especially enjoy watching that much. Like, it's a good movie. I would never say it's a bad movie, but, like, it's a little harder to appreciate, like, what made it so revolutionary when it came out, if you were seeing it for the first time as I did way after that zeitgeist.
I have no idea if this is accurate. There is a video creator, Eric Sophia Edershawn here. They go by Curio on YouTube, and I highly recommend checking out their videos. They're very good. Who is researching the Matrix movies right now, and apparently, I cannot tell if this was a joke that they put together or if this is an actual thing, but when Neo dives into Agent Smith in the hallway, it's apparently supposed to be a deeply sexual experience for Agent Smith. And that's in the script.
All right, maybe it's time to rewatch The Matrix. Is that rule? But point being, I've definitely had that feeling before, not just with The Matrix. Like, there are other examples. But I do think that with this movie, I can only speak for myself. I didn't did not feel like super duper taken out of it for that reason, even though it is a familiar story at this point. I think,
to be clear, just to interject really quick, I did not feel taken out of it in any way, shape, or form.
sure.
I just didn't get that tension. I just want to make sure that's clear, that like I'm not here to say that if you have seen this before, you'll be taken out of it. It just might not land in that same tense way. Or again, I could just be broken inside. Who knows?
No, I mean, I think that's a fair clarification. Because I will agree when it comes to like the literal tension as far as being a thriller, I didn't feel super tense in that way either. But what I really appreciated about the movie as like a character study was the way that the really, really strong direction like sort of portrayed this feeling of a character who is, you know, descending into madness, which is of course a common trope. But I think in particular, it's the particulars that make it.
It's that disjointedness of the character doesn't know, but it's very rare for the audience to also have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Like, I really love how many, like, cuts and shots in this movie are really seamless. And, like, there's very rarely a delineation between, like, what is acting, like, what is reality. And that, of course, is a well-worn, like, cinematic tool. But it's done really fluidly here in a way that did make me feel unsettled. I think especially recently. Another reason I have to watch Paprika is because clearly Satoshi Kon's got a big thing about dreams. This movie kind of plays out like a dream or a nightmare. And then, you know, we went and made another big old movie about dreams. But a lot of the scenes that really got to me most in terms of like putting me on edge were not like Mima getting like stalked or, you know, unsure of like who to trust or, you know, whether like something violent was really happening or not. It wasn't those scenes. It was like her just like waking up in bed after like something fucked up had happened and like not being sure if that was a dream. And then like the movie, like that's a scene, right? But like it didn't really start getting to because the movie commits. Like after a while, like every scene, it seems like every scene transition is just Mima like waking up in her bed. I mean, like, fuck, I don't know if that was a dream or not.
Or a director calling cut and realizing that the last scene was a lie in the form of acting. Good.
Yes.
It's so good.
No, there's lots of great transitions like this. I'd say it's like, weirdly enough, like those transitions are like what sell the mood of the movie. And also just like, I really like the style of the visuals, even if the visuals themselves can be rough at times. But like the style is great.
Absolutely. And I do have to give the movie credit that there are moments where like they went, you know, the director went cut and it was like, oh shit, wait, what? That was part of the show that they are filming within this movie. That wasn't a moment in her life, and like that would actively startle me back into the film. So while it might not have been tense, like there were definitely moments of, I guess, unsettled startling within it.
Yeah, I think what the main feeling I take away from this movie and why it resonates so strongly in terms of the filmmaking for me is that I think the feeling that it most strongly conveys isn't so much tension, but like helplessness. Like the movie does a really good job at putting you in this character's headspace who is not in control of her own life, really. Like, you know, she's got managers, she's got agents, she's got directors. Her career is kind of at the whims of like a writer. And that's even before getting into more like outwardly antagonistic forces, you know, which will leave to spoiler discussion perhaps. And like, so I think that the dream, that nightmare emulation is a big part of that, because I know that recently, if we're going to get too real, like one of the things that resonated with me is that recently I have a tendency to have like dreams that are just like layers upon layers upon layers of different realities. Like I'll wake up within the dream and still be in the dream and not sure whether or not I'm awake. And then, you know, it'll become very obvious that something's off and I'll wake up again. And eventually like that happens enough times you start to feel really helpless until you are on the top layer of reality and being like, fuck. Okay, I think I'm here, but like I can't be sure anymore. That was like the most restless night of sleep I've ever had in my entire life.
That is terrifying. That is absolutely horrifying.
That's happened to me several times over the past month.
See, all that happens to me when I have weird dreams. Like, I don't remember my dreams, but when I get weird dreams, I just wake up and just go, "Ah!" And to be clear, I find this fucking hilarious. One time I woke up, stood up bolt upright in bed, yelled for like a sustained 10 seconds, and then just laid back down in bed. And I sleep with Sam, who was not happy about that one. She was very much just like, are you okay? What's wrong? What happened? What happened? Meanwhile, I'm over here already aware that I had a weird dream, no idea what it was, and I am trying not to cackle to myself because I find this to be the funniest fucking thing in the world, but I know it's cruel and it is not intentional, and it's also not the only time I've done that. Again, I have no idea what the dreams were about, no idea why I was screaming, no problem falling right back asleep.
It's an enviable feeling, honestly. Well, see, because I feel like my mind, I don't want to go too down the fucking like Freudian hole of like talking about dreams, but I feel like my mind and I are in an arms race when it comes to dreams, and that like I had very intense nightmares growing up as a child to the point where like I didn't want to go to sleep. They were so bad, and eventually like I got over that, and then when I was a little older, they came back, and then it stopped happening. Then the nightmares changed and became like more realistic as I got older, but then that also stopped happening. And now we're here at like, it's like we've defeated every type of nightmare. So like my brain's like, all right, this is the only way I have left to torment you, Jackson Keller. We're gonna
Buckle up, fucko.
We're gonna lock you up in like a Vertigo, like Mobius strip loop of realities. Like enjoy. So
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that one, I was gonna say, like, nightmares don't really bother me just because I like horror movies and weird shit. So like I'm usually very quick to keen on like, okay, this is a fucking dream, and not give a hot shit. That would freak me out.
It's weird. Like, I wonder, oh God, we're going down the Freudian, like, dream loop. But, like, I remember most recently when I was having a bunch of nightmares, they stopped because, like, I could reasonably do, like, lucid dreaming, like, identify when I'm in a dream. And, like, when more traditional nightmares, like, started happening, like, I was getting chased by, like, a monster or some shit, I would just stop and, like, stand there like a Chad and take it. And because it was a dream, I was, like, and I knew it, I was completely unharmed. And it's, like, that was, like, the breaking point. And that's when my mind started throwing like realistic personal trauma at me.
See, here's a approach then, because this is what I do. Is like as soon as I realize it's a dream, I just go, okay, mind, let's keep it rolling. Because for me, it's like, all right, we're watching a movie inside my brain. Let's go. Which I like.
No, to be clear, like that's me a lot of the time too. I'm not sitting here like, you know, not able to sleep because I'm trapped in like a tortured like Lovecraft pocket dimension inside my brain. But it's happened more than once recently, which is a little worrying. It's something, I guess, bringing this nightmare discussion back to Perfect Blue.
This has been Nightmare Discussion with Sean and Jackson, a podcast inside a podcast, completely unrelated to one another. Don't worry about it.
You know, let's wake up and like return to the level of reality we were talking about Perfect Blue. But I do think that like as weirdly specific as that is, like, that is something about the movie that resonated with me very strongly. That just that image of, like, I keep waking up and, like, shit's fucked. And, like, shit's still fucked when I wake up. But I don't know if I'm all the way there yet. And I think that the movie in general does a very good job. It tackles a lot of themes, a lot of dimensions, often in very specific ways. Like, stuff that's very specific to Japanese idol culture in the 90s. And yet, despite that, like, you know, through that specificity, and I think then, you know, a lot of the movies that I really love tend to do this, is that despite being like so specific, somehow like by committing to those elements so hard, like, and trusting the audience that, like, even if you're not 100% clued in to, like, the Japanese idol or acting industry, you're going to be able to take something away from it, even if you are just another schmuck with a podcast in fucking Ohio. And I think that the movie was really good at that, and that despite Mima's circumstances being very far removed from my own in terms of, like, I mean, gender, for one, like, you know, this is a lot of the horror in this movie is, like, very directly tied into the experience of being a woman, a famous woman, which is like another layer removed.
Do you think there might be parallels to Jodie Foster in some capacity in this movie?
No.
No.
Couldn't be that, you know, a movie that mentions her by name has any parallels.
And they're definitely not filming a show based on Silence of the Lambs in any capacity. No.
Absolutely not. But yeah, like, despite all that, like, I found myself, or maybe because of all that, I found myself very engaged with Mima's character and very much able to put myself in that headspace. And I think a lot of that was also just the filmmaking. Really strong stuff, really spectacular stuff. Not easy to watch in some ways.
And speaking of two basic ass white dude schlubs with a podcast from Ohio, let me take this moment to jump off and talk about how I related to the film, because I can do that without spoiling anything, but delving deep into why it works on a personal level, despite the fact that I you know, I'm sorry, I do have to break it to all of our wonderful horselings, our wonderful listeners. I am not a Japanese pop idol.
Sean, why else do you think I agreed to host this podcast with you? I mean, you're only revealing this to me now after 4 years?
I know, Jackson. I'm sorry. I really am. I know this is a massive betrayal, but I used Hatsune Miku to do all those songs for you.
Well, you did used to deliver pizzas, so that tracks.
Oh, watch Miku dance on the top of your Donato's box. Fuck, that's nothing. So let's talk about this. A big stressor in this movie is the transition from a pop icon to an actor, which, to be fair, again, not a pop icon, not an actor. I'm gonna go on a limb here. Most people aren't those things.
Mm-hmm. You can retweet.
That's a stretch of the imagination, I know, but most people are not. And yet somehow the stress and trauma of this transition was made apparent even through my own life. Like, I have not, my transition has been largely within my own sphere. I do not have a large, loyal following behind me. No offense, horselings, we love you very much.
We have a loyal following, but you're not a large following.
Yes. I'm not seeing millions of downloads on the horse cast provided by my devout Sean stans, as I call them. So it was very small. It was very much like me moving from one role to another, and yet it is still amongst the most stressful things that I've ever dealt with. Like, there are days where I'm just like, this is such a change. This is such a shift. I can't handle it. I can't deal with this. And like, what is real? What is life? What is anything? Is this worth continuing on about? And like, this movie is very much even beyond the transition from pop idol to actress, about the loss of innocence and the change of perspective and the stresses that come along with that, and dealing with like self-image and recognizing yourself in different roles. And like, there are times where I'm like, I have to ask myself, am I still me working this 9-to-5 job? Is this who I am? Like, I have always tried to channel a little bit more of a punk attitude, a cavalier attitude in that regard. And now that I'm back on my desk jockey roles, I'm kind of like, is this who I am? And that daily stress can be a lot. And like Mima, who is still performing her role absolutely flawlessly, or as flawlessly as one can perform a role. I have no issue with going about my daily life, performing my tasks, performing my roles, but there is definitely that under the surface roiling of, oh God, what am I doing? What is anything? What is life? Fuck. I haven't killed anyone, though, that I know of.
Not yet.
We should talk spoilers, huh?
I guess I could say one more thing, pre-spoilers, kind of in that vein.
Yeah, please.
Like, because it's a specific scene, but it's very early on, just at the very beginning, like before the plot, as it were, like even really gets going, when Mama's having her first day on set, and she's just sitting there, like, reciting her one line of dialogue for this fucking, like, hack fraud Silence of the Lambs ripoff. And, like, just those shots of, like, her looking around at everyone else in the room and, like, man, like, it again, you don't have to be an actor to, like, have this feeling of, like, you're looking around to, like, all these other, like, professional looking, like, very serious people, and you see how they're looking at you, and maybe they're laughing, and you're not sure if they're laughing at you, and that starts to, like, tear at you. Like,
boy, the isolation of a new job is a lot. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Try starting a new job in a pandemic at that.
Woo! My man's playing on European extreme mode right now. But yeah, like I guess like just I wanted to sort of bring that scene to the forefront because it really, really stuck out to me. And like I'm not in that exact position, nor am I in like Sean's exact position, but the movie does such a good job of drawing that feeling out from me in like its own way and like making me connect to a character whose like experience doesn't quite match up to my own. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Truly,
it's a sign of a talented filmmaker. Let's talk spoilers. That sounded really grandiose, and that's not something that I don't fucking. I also just said grandiose, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce that word at all. Oh God.
Don't worry, Sean. If it's wrong, you can make a shirt out of it, like Thanos.
Oh boy. All right. If you enjoyed the podcast, please follow us on iTunes, leave us reviews, tell friends about us. It's the only way we grow. Follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/BADHcast. No idea what's going on with that. It's paused currently, so we're not charging anybody. Don't worry about it. But I mean, you can go take a look at it. We got some really good bonus episodes on there if you can access them. I don't know if you can. Woo! Next. Sorry, that woo surprised me.
I was okay with it.
Next week, we're going to be talking about Akira Kurosawa's Sanjuro. And if you are familiar with Kurosawa, as we've previously been talking about him, we keep referring to him as making the 4-hour Seven Samurai movie. But if you're like, I want to watch this movie with them, it's only an hour and a half. It's not going to take you that long. So please join us in watching one of the greats films and learn about blood squibs next week, because we certainly will be.
Oh man, I mean, speaking of blood squibs, there's a lot of good anime over the top blood squibs in Perfect Blue. I appreciate that approach to blood.
Yes. God, give me the gore. Spoilers?
Let's do it.
So I want to open up with a question for you. And this is something that I have been, in the discussion that we've had back and forth, we haven't really engaged with this, but something that's been kind of lingering in the back of my brain. You have referred to the director as a hack fraud. Do you think the movie presents him as such? Because the vibe that I get from the movie is generally more of like, this writer is actually fairly talented, and while the rape scene in question, which I'm sure is what you're going to mostly be citing for it, is absolutely rough. It's rough. It's rough in the way that the movie very much wants it to be. I should make that abundantly clear.
That's what we mean. We say the movie's hard to watch, by the way.
Yes. I will have put a content warning earlier back there. I didn't do it sooner, but we definitely should toss one on this.
Yeah.
So, hi, previous editor Sean. How you doing? So I'm just curious as to know, like, where are you getting the hack fraud vibes from? Because I kind of got the vibe that he was a fairly competent writer director, but I mean, everybody makes questionable decisions.
Oh, sure. And hack is maybe too strong a word. And that I think the vibe overall, it has maybe less to do with the writer or the director's individual talent, but I think the attitude the movie takes towards the work being done here is viewed through an uncharitable lens, shall we say? Maybe a hack is like too strong of a statement, but it's sort of like, I'm thinking of a few scenes, a few things that lead up to this, and a lot of these would not be the fault of the writer. So, for example, in his introductory scene, where I think it's the writer and the director, or the writer and the producer, just like going around set, and they're like shooting the shit, and like he talks to one of the actresses, and she's like, "Oh, like you got to tell me how my plot line ends," and he's like, "Haha, no spoilers," being all coy, and he walks away. He's like, "Fuck, man, I haven't even thought about where this is going," and like that was funny, and not necessarily an indication. Let me put it this way: that's more, I think, of a thing besmirching the institution of the entertainment industry than the talent of any particular given writer. So we've talked about anime a couple of times on the show, and no. But more specifically, we've talked about a couple of manga adaptations, and I cannot off the top of my head think if I've talked about this or not. I imagine it must have come up at least during one of our JoJo discussions, but at least like Weekly Shonen Jump, like the most famous manga stuff, Japanese work schedules are brutal and insane, and there needs to be more labor rights in that country, frankly.
Have fun teaching over there.
Yeah. Anyways, my own existential dread at what dark contract I've signed aside, the point being,
wait, hang on, when you signed that, was it with a strange big nosed man in a velvet room of some sort?
Sean, you can't tease me like this, because I would want nothing more than that. You know that everything in my life is an attempt to capture that feeling. Anyways,
Persona's not real, Jackson.
I know.
He ain't real.
My man Igor's not coming to tell me I'm a good boy. Even if he was going to do that, I'm far too old. It's like Harry Potter, you don't get the letter. Your 11th birthday passes and you realize you're just another normie. I cannot remember. Oh, institutions. So I think that the commentary is more pointed, and I think this relates a lot to Mima's character and her situation, that like, sure, the writer doesn't have a script ready. The writer's doing, clearly doing something kind of for shock value. He's like, oh, I came up with an idea. Let's put our new, fresh face like idol in a rape scene. Like, wouldn't that be shocking? Like you could be uncharitable and interpret that as him being a hack. But I think more so, like it almost doesn't matter whether or not he's a hack, because that's what the system of, I mean, not Hollywood, I guess, but like the entertainment industry sort of inevitably must produce. That like you have your weekly deadlines, you're sort of a slave to the whims of the fans. It seems like the show, the way they talk about the show, it's not like super high regarded. They're like, oh, it's just kind of like edgy, like drama, like whatever. And I think that this corporatization, this commodification of art, I think is more on the forefront of the movie's mind than whether or not any individual actor in it is a hack. I think the movie is a little unkind towards a lot of the people in power. I think, for example, that like her agents, well, the one agent is very controlling, but both of them, even the guy agent that doesn't turn out to be like a projecting, like murderous person, he's a little controlling. Like he, makes decisions without really getting Mima's consent on them, and like doesn't really think through the implications. But like based on what we see from him, he's not like a bad guy, right? Like, he's just doing his job, but his job like feeds into this media cycle that we kind of see throughout the movie. And I think it's actually really smart and subtle in that way. So yeah, hack, I may have loaded the deck a little bit too much with hack in the pre-discussion.
No, that's totally fair. And I mostly presented this as is there an avenue of discussion to be had down this way? Just because I hadn't considered that in any shape or form. Also, as soon as you mentioned that, like, yeah, this rape scene was in there basically for shock value, because I did forget that moment happened. I was on team the director is a hack.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Or the writer is a hack. So,
Sure.
I mean, you convinced me very quickly, inadvertently. But yeah, I was mostly just curious because, like, that felt like a really interesting avenue to follow that I wasn't even considering. And in fact, I would say that I wasn't really considering the external influences on the situation in the way that you're describing here either. I was mostly focused on the just trauma of transitioning from one role to another, given that's most related to my life at this moment. And so it was interesting kind of hearing you explore through that regard. I mean, I could have also gotten to that point through an examination of capitalism. Ooh. We've never talked about that on the podcast.
It's all about capitalism in the end.
Because, I mean, there's a very easy way to just be like, yeah, no, I mean, it's controlled by capitalism and it's not anybody's in particular's fault. Everybody's just doing their job and looking for the next thing. But, you know, Mima doesn't know what she's looking for at the time and inadvertently stumbles into something that she doesn't inherently agree with and finds herself in a worse place than she started off with. Theoretically, it's unclear if that's really what she believes. She's kind of going through some stuff.
Yeah, and like I think that's what's really, like, you never totally get a sense, like, even at the end, like, you get a much clearer sense that, like, she is a more confident person, more, like, secure in who she is at the end. Almost, maybe we can talk about the last shot if it's too much or if it's appropriately, like, a nice release later, but, you know, we could kind of table that, I guess. But, like, throughout the movie, it's like, you know, a lot is made. And, you know, a lot of this is on purpose when, you know, we find out the reveal that, like, the other Mima, the idol persona, is actually, like, the other manager, the lady manager who is, like, a ex-pop idol and is, you know, projecting a lot of her own, like, shit and baggage on how, you know, women get kind of, like, chewed up and spit out by a unfeeling exploitative industry.
Capitalism.
Oh, so many fun things roll together in this movie.
It's a fun movie full of fun things happening. Isn't it fun to sit and watch people degrade? Fun for everyone.
Sean, the problem, and maybe this is why I keep having, like, I'm locked in, like, a nightmare prison, because I do think it's fun. I do enjoy it. I'm like, yes, this is why we live, to confront our darkest impulse.
Maybe you deserve the nightmare prison.
But yeah, like, I think one of the things that's so great and subtle and layered about this movie is that, like, you could totally watch it and be like, I had a little bit more of an eye on the external stuff, like, just, you know, I don't want to get too much into it just because of some, like, a bit of personal drama going on, not like this, obviously, but like, you know, related to some of those themes and how, like, a person's perception of themselves can be burdened by expectation. And, like, I think that's one of the saddest things about the movie is that, like, even at the very end, you never get a sense of, like, you know, the other Mima was telling her that, like, you know, she came to Tokyo to sing, like, oh, like, do we really want to move on to acting? Like, I feel like you don't, I could be wrong, but I feel like you don't ever really know, right? And there's something sad about that, like, you know, maybe poor Mima just wanted to, you know, sing, and, like, now her old, like, idol, like, bandmates are, like, moving on to bigger and better things without her, and she's got to kind of make the best of this path. I mean, the fact that she seems to be on her way to making the best of that path, I mean, I still think that's ultimately an optimistic ending, but there's something sad about that, you know? But then again, maybe this is what she wanted, but you can't fucking tell because there's so many different forces, like, pulling and pushing her, like, back and forth there.
I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, that does also go back into, like, my own struggles of, like, is this, you know, where I want to be? How am I feeling about everything? And it's interesting. And I think this is kind of why I do enjoy the ending scene, because it's something that I have found in even my past few years of roiling turmoil as I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life, where eventually I will settle into something and find some form of happiness within it. So like that final shot of her walking away from Rumi as she goes to see Rumi in the mental hospital, and she walks away from it being very satisfied and seems to be quite content with her life. Like, I think that there is some truth to that. So like, even if she is not sure about the transition from pop idol to actor, she found some sort of success or some sort of identity in who she has become. Whether that is famous or not, it's honestly kind of unclear as to how successful she ends up being as well. I think that there's a fairly easy reading to this that she might not be super successful. And the fact that those people recognized her was not out of success, but out of she survived an incredibly traumatic incident that probably got broadcast some places.
Yeah, or even like, oh, there's that one girl who was a pop idol. Like, I mean, like the way that like people look at like old bands from like the 90s or the early 2000s that are around anymore. Like, yeah, I think that's a totally valid interpretation too. I think I do ultimately like the last shot. It just stood out to me because I think it's appropriate, and I think it is a good release. And I think that I like that, you know, despite all these things, you know, that you're talking about, that like it seems like her character is moving in a positive direction. It's just so, it's jarring a little bit. And I wasn't sure if it was in a good or a bad way. Like, she's like, yeah, looking in the mirror, like, you know, gives a like cool, like Sonic the Hedgehog smile, like, I'm the real thing. Yeah.
Fuck off.
But no, I mean, like, her face, I'm making that comparison because we've been memeing about Sonic, but like, it kind of is. Like, I was so like taken aback by it. I actually like paused, and I'm like, when the credits started rolling, and I'm like, am I missing something? Like, that felt really not like out of character, but that felt like really new and different. Like, is there some dark implication of this that I'm missing? And I rerouted. I'm like, no, girl's just confident. It's nice to see.
Hell yeah, get that confidence, even if it means surviving a killer.
Well, listen, we all have to be MGS1 Solid Snake before we can become MGS2 Solid Snake.
Jackson, I'm going to hang up this call right now. Jackson, I will hang up the fucking phone.
I feel like it's been a hot minute since I've dropped that one on you.
I guess. It's not a welcome returning visitor. This is a visitor that walked in with dog crap still on its shoe. Get the fuck out.
Listen, Sean, you know, you have about 15 minutes of discussion to try and tie Jellicle Cats into this as revenge.
Or we can just end the podcast here forever. In all honesty, though, I don't know that I really necessarily have anything left to say about the film. It was kind of strange that at one point, Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat did show. I did it! Round of applause. No, I don't have anything left to say.
No, I actually agree. I'm glad that you know, I gave you that nice lob for the cats. You know, we brought it in, we brought it home here at the end.
Well, you lobbed it at me, and I basically slammed it into the ground in front of home plate as hard as I could because it was terrible. It was bad.
Listen, we all can't be perfect blue, okay? But no, I mean, I don't have terribly too much to say either.
I don't want to speculate on like the nature of the killer and who was real and who wasn't or anything like that. I feel like that kind of goes in the face of the film. So if you're expecting us to do that, sorry. It just, I mean, it doesn't really interest either of us, and we rarely have that type of speculative discussion in this podcast. We're far more interested in engaging with things on the level that it seems to want to be engaged with, and most movies, I feel, generally aren't looking to solve that mystery if they're not Knives Out.
True!
And that's a dig on Knives Out. I fucking love Knives Out, but just worth saying.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll say is that Perfect Blue, if you have not watched it, if you have a strong enough stomach for some pretty gnarly stuff, I think it's well worth your time. I think it's discomforting in a very rewarding way, and I look forward to watching more. of Satoshi Kon's work. I guess I got to watch Paprika so it can be my new favorite movie instead of Inception.
I mean, I would be down to watch more Satoshi Kon's work for the podcast, honestly. I very much enjoyed it. And I still, like, for as much as I rail against anime and anime references on this podcast, we have done a lot of anime-based movies and TV shows. And I do think that there is some really good, interesting value in that form of media. So yeah, I would be down to talk about Paprika or something at some point, just because, yeah, I'm fucking interested. Let's do it.
Fuck yeah. That's what I like to hear. Sean, close us out.
I am Sean McKinda. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. I mostly retweet Jackson right now because he's got a lot going on and you should support him.
Aw, thanks, bud. I am Jackson Keller, and I appreciate Sean's support. My dear, wonderful friend. You can find me on Twitter at Jackson J. Keller. More importantly, right now, I've been streaming on Twitch again. We're doing creative writing seminars on Mondays at 5:30. So come along. There's, writing prompts, a little bit of a lecture from me, and like as much as the viewers of Beating a Dead Horse may recoil at the thought of more Jackson lectures, I am technically like qualified to be a college professor in this particular topic, creative writing. So like, you're getting college level classes for free on twitch.tv/Jackson J. Keller on Mondays. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays, you're getting fucking Pokemon. What's not to love? And then I also have a YouTube channel, just Jackson Keller, that I will be uploading. I think I'll be uploading the full like edited VODs of my classes to my YouTube channel on Mondays before I go live, like probably at noon. I was going to try and upload them tonight, but I realized that sitting through 2 hours of me yammering and editing that down to like something comprehensible for YouTube, and then like, recording Horsecast movies, it's too much. I need a more sensible schedule. Anyways,
who would ever have to listen to you talk for multiple hours at a time while they edit that?
Sean, you're doing God's work, buddy.
I mean, Derek. It's Derek.
Yeah, fuck Derek. We got rid of him.
Yeah, fuck Derek.
He's sleeping with the fishes. He was a wise guy.
Oh no, I don't like this. This has gone too far. I don't like this anymore. YouTube, Jackson J. Keller on YouTube.
Oh, no, just Jackson Keller on YouTube. I know my branding isn't consistent, but I'm a rebel. I'm a rogue.
Here's the thing. Your branding not being consistent is consistent with our branding not being consistent. Our podcast is at BADH_cast on Twitter and patreon.com/BADHcast. That's right. There's no underscore in that one on Patreon. Follow us on Twitter, please. Check out the Patreon if you want. I don't know how that fucking works right now. It's paused. We're not collecting any money from anybody. Thank you to Loads of Higher. The views of our theme song is Suicide. Alternate take of the High Octane, the Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band. You should go check them out wherever you can. Buy their music, support their music, stream their music, whatever you got to do. Support them. Also, 25 years later, site.com is a little button in the corner that you should absolutely go click on. But while you're there, you should check out everything else going on. It's Twin Peaks month, which means that it is just a whole bunch of shit happening over there that you should absolutely be reading. Next week, we're going to be talking about another Akira Kurosawa film, and that is Sanjuro. I am pretty pumped about this because I really like Akira Kurosawa, and I'm pumped because it's an hour and a half long.
Get hype. Blood squibs. Hell yeah.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go